Hello. To anyone who's tuning in, I'm sorry, but technology has failed us. So I'm having to give you a little overview of the rubber rockery. And what we'll do is Paul's going to pop a link up to a YouTube video I did last year, which does actually show the hostas out at the moment. At the moment, they're just coming through looking a bit like asparagus spears. So the rubber rockery, you've heard the adage, no doubt, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. Well, life gave me a heap of old tyres. Now, they vary in size from tractor tyres through to sports car tyres. And it's like a little history of us being in Mickfield for the past 45 plus years, of all the vehicles that have passed through our gates and have been used, abused and cast aside. And so we've got all these tyres about the place. And so what I did, I decided to have a little experiment and arranged all the tyres in a formation. So some are sitting on top of others. So I've got the three big tractor tyres sitting on smaller tyres. So it kind of looks like there's rings underneath the big tyre. So I've left as much planting area as I can of the tyres that are sitting underneath. And in all the tyres, I've popped hostas. It's a bit of an experiment. I know they grow really, really well in containers. So I thought, well, they should be able to grow in tyres because it's just another container. But there are a few issues with tyres, not least the fact that you probably would have to put them somewhere shady because they'll heat up quite a bit during the day. And you don't want your soil drying out too much in the summer, which is when they're usually seeking a bit more moisture. So the plus side of tyres is there isn't a bottom to them. So ultimately, the big ones that I've got in the tractor tyres should be able to sink their roots down into the soil below the formation of the rockery. That's the theory. They haven't been there long enough to do that yet. So this is year 4 or 5, I think. I've made a few changes. A few hostas didn't really like being there. They weren't growing particularly well. And so I moved them or decided to replace them altogether. And what I've done is I've actually put, in most of the tyres, I've put sales plants in rather than established plants because I want to give them a fair shot of how they'll do. The second part of the experiment was to see whether or not they had more snail damage being in that scenario than they would have if they were in pots or in the ground. And the beauty of the tyres is that I do notice even if the plant isn't damaged, I notice there's snail or slug activity because they leave their little snail trails. Now, if you were tuning in even to the Q&A this morning, you will have heard me talk about snail trails. And the beauty of the trail is the fact that if you disturb it, quite often the snail won't return. They use them as navigational trails to find their way back to a food source that they've already started attacking. So if you act quickly as soon as you see damage in your hosta, just try and see if you can find the snail trail and disturb it. Just rub it out. If it's in soil, just disturb the soil around the base of your plant. Rub up the sides of your pots and all that sort of thing. They're very lazy feeders and they'll keep coming back using that snail trail. But naturally, they spend an awful lot of energy on laying the trail in the first place. It helps them get about. So just disrupting it works really, really well. Anyhow, I've had a little bit of nibble here and there. The biggest problem I have is Muntjac Deer. I don't tend to have a problem with the rabbits. The rabbits will come along and nip the tops off all the little planting I've put around the display to try and sort of soften the whole thing, because although I don't mind seeing a heap of tyres, I'm kind of used to it over the course of my life, my neighbours necessarily wouldn't want to see it. So what I'm trying to do is develop some planting that sits at the back of the rockery because it's against my neighbour's fence. But actually my neighbours rather like it and have put their own F1 tyre in their own garden just at the other side of the fence. So I think, it's kind of a thumbs up to the whole thing. And it's starting to look pretty because it's spring and a lot of the shrubs are starting to come out. I've got some dwarf lilac, I've got a strantia that's not coming through yet. A strantia is a really good thing to plant with hostas because snails don't like the smell of it. And it does work really well. I've tried it before in my garden, it works. So I thought, right, I'll plant some strantia around the rockery as well. And this year I'm planting some alliums as well on the theory that they don't really like elements of the onion family, like garlic. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that swear by garlic spray, but you have to be quite dedicated to keep using it. Because once you start, you do need to keep doing it throughout the season because, again, a bit like most treatments, it will decay over time. It becomes less, it loses its strength as it gets rained on or heavy dew, that sort of thing. And I don't tend to use the garlic spray, but I understand some people have had a good results from it. I just tend to prefer things like planting, and they're just companion planting. So I haven't tried wild garlic yet. That's next on my list. But as I said, I've planted a lot of alliums as well, and sort of I'm hoping my neighbours will appreciate alliums a little bit more than the backs of the tyres. What else was I going to say? I do explain quite a bit about all the varieties I've got in the tyres in the video that Paul will put up later. And it is a wider tour of that particular part of the nursery during the summer when the plants are out. At the moment, it does look like a study in tyres because the plants aren't coming out yet. But I like experimenting with different sorts of containers. Metal containers work really well for hostas, especially if we want to try and prevent pest damage because they don't like metal of any shape or form. Copper especially, because copper will give off a small electrical charge if it comes in contact with moisture. So as you can imagine, a snail comes along with its slime and it makes a contact and it gets a little shock. But it's quite expensive stuff to buy, and if you've got multiple thousands of pots to try and put tape around, copper tape around, it's going to cost us a fortune and take forever to do. It's just not feasible. One of the best ways you can stop snail damage is to isolate your plant using a moat. So if you do grow them in containers other than tyres, if you stick the pot into a shallow dish or tray about that deep, keep a good distance between the edge of the tray and the pot, and keep that topped up with water throughout the season. That will act as a moat, but more importantly, it helps the plant, as hostas do like to go down for their moisture. They'll sink their roots an awful long way to get moisture. So if you water from below, it helps create a good, strong plant, and it helps keep a good moisture level in your pot as well, especially if you've got a tall pot. You can quite often put your finger in the top couple of inches of your pot and think, oh, that's dry, and water. And sometimes it doesn't need the water. If you go down a little bit further, there's quite a decent amount of moisture in there. So it does avoid the risk of over or under watering your plant. So look, just keep that tray topped up with water, and throughout the season, so take it out of that as it gets to dormancy around about October, November time. And it won't cause the plant any harm because the crown will be well above the water level. So that's a good tip. Now, I'm actually growing, the rubber orchid itself is under very young oak trees. So it's another reason I need to think about container growing the hostas in some form if I'm going to have them in that field, because it's very dry otherwise. But we're on a clay, the edge of the London clay beds, believe it or not, in the depths of mid-Suffolk, which holds moisture really well. But unfortunately, when you've got trees like some of our native varieties, such as the oaks, they tend to be rather thirsty. So your hostas don't really stand too much of a chance, and they won't grow to their full capability if they're in that scenario. They'll just tend to stunt a bit. So if you haven't got tyres and you don't necessarily want to do pots, you could always sink an oversized pot and grow your plant on in that environment, so you can selectively water in times when you really do need to do it. I would always be tempted just perhaps put a ring or take the bottom out of the pot so that the plant can ultimately just root through into the soil. But it's a way of being able to cope with some of our more aggressive native trees. The hostas aren't native to the UK. They come from Japan, Korea and China primarily, and are slope dwellers. So they're used to grabbing moisture and nutrient on the way through. So if you've got a good strong root system, which watering from low tends to promote, then your plant is going to withstand serious dry and wet conditions. And actually, I should say just about wet conditions. If you do have a tendency for your garden to get flooded, I would always plant my hostas on a mound so that the crown of the plant is well above wherever you might have standing water. They're not aquatic, so they would rot off in that situation. So the bottomless tyres on my rubber rockery are the theory, and 4 or 5 years into it, they're working quite well, and I've got some lovely results. The video does show a few looking really quite lovely, and a few that I've had to replace. I can't quite remember now. I did the video at the tail end of last year. So if you watch this space, or come back to my website at some point, or even better, subscribe to my free newsletter, which I send out once a month. No doubt I'll do another updated video at some point in the season, and you can see how the plants are faring then, and see how the experiment is going. If there are any questions or any follow-up that you'd like to make, please do contact me via the website, and I'm more than happy to answer your questions. Even better, come and visit us at the nursery throughout the season. All the open days are listed on the website, and come and have a look for yourself. I'm quite happy to share my successes and my failures, because it's good to let everybody know how these things can be done in your own home, in your own garden even. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'm sorry again that no visuals, but wait for a little bit and there'll be a video linking to the virtual flower show, and I hope you continue to enjoy the event. It's certainly been entertaining to do, even if it means running from one end of the nursery to the other because I can't get a signal. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll say goodbye now and speak to you at some point in the future, I hope.